Recruiting never sleeps, and it definitely doesn't sleep on this show. On today's episode, what Texas needs to do to bring in the number one class in the country for the second straight year. That's coming up on Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. Please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and remember to leave a comment. That's one of the fastest ways to help us grow here on Locked On. Your team every day. Appreciate you everydayers and you first-timers as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with our friends at Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We've got a couple of updates on some Texas transfers who are standing out in fall camp. We'll get to that in segments 2 and 3 a little bit later, but we'll open up with some recruiting chatter on a Wednesday show. Texas currently has the 6th highest ranked recruiting class in America for 2026. That's pretty good, right? Most teams would be thrilled to have the number 6 class in any cycle, but things are a little bit different around here. And y'all know that Texas has had 4 straight top 5 classes, and more importantly, they've had 1 straight top 1 class. And once you know that you can reach number 1, well, you want to keep getting there, right? Like last recruiting cycle was really fun. This year has been kind of fun, especially over the last couple of weeks since what went down at SEC Media Days in Atlanta. But we're not just looking for kind of fun. We're looking for really fun. Nobody wants to be number 1 at something just one time. Once you get there, you want to keep doing it time after time after time. So what does Texas have to do to once again land the top-ranked class, this time for the 26 cycle? It's not a pipe dream. There is a path for this to actually happen. And the path starts with Texas landing 4-star defensive lineman Jake Krell, the edge rusher from IMG Academy in Florida. He's set to announce his commitment next Tuesday on August 12th. Texas, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss, his 3 finalists in that battle. Texas was playing catch-up for a big part of this recruitment, but it sounds like 6 days out, the Longhorns are in the lead. And most Texas insiders feel pretty good about Texas ultimately winning this battle. For a while, it felt like OU was the team to beat. Right now, it feels like Texas is that team. And look, anytime you get a 4-star, you'll take it. Anytime you can get one that was considering your biggest rival, yeah, you'll take that even more. Jake Krell is a top 10 edge rusher in this class, the 63rd ranked player overall. So if the Longhorns land him, they'll likely go from class number 5 or 6, depending on which site you look at. And, the composite rankings have Texas at number 6, which is why I used that number earlier. You go from 5 or 6 to 3 or 4 if you pick up the commitment of Jake Krell. That's how good he is. And that's kind of where the Longhorns class stacks up with some of the teams that are ranked just ahead of them right now. So 3 or 4 is better than 5 or 6, but it isn't number 1, and that's what we're going for here. So for Texas to climb up to that number 1 spots, they're going to need a little bit more, and they're going to need some flips. So who are some of the top flip candidates that Texas could realistically get before National Signing Day on December 3rd? We'll start with an offensive tackle. We've been talking about that position a lot this week since the Andre Kojo injury story dropped on Monday. Obviously, a flip isn't going to be able to help this season, but a flip would help for the future and hopefully ensure that Texas isn't in this kind of spot down the line. You got to keep bringing in a number of offensive linemen in every single class. Texas has a few of them and a few really good ones committed already, but landing 4-star tackle Malachi Lee from Honolulu, yes, that Honolulu. I don't really know if there's another Honolulu. I don't know why I said that. He's currently committed to Michigan. Texas was one of the finalists when he announced his commitment last month. And since Lee picked Michigan, Texas hasn't stopped recruiting him. I mean, the staff has been in constant communication, and more importantly, Malachi Lee has been responding to Texas's calls and texts. So, Lloyd, I'm telling you, there's a chance, and I'd say a pretty good one. I feel good about Texas getting the flip. I think tackle might be the top need for Texas in this cycle. Obviously, the Felix Ojo situation didn't help. The Longhorns felt like for a majority of that recruitment, they were in the driver's seat for Felix Ojo. Tech comes in with that last-minute huge offer. He ends up committing there instead. So, again, Texas has a few talented guys committed right now, but they are still looking for more. And I think the Horns would and probably should be going all in on another blue chip offensive tackle in this class. So, Malachi Lee, we've talked about him a couple of times. Again, Texas has remained in constant communication with him even after his commitment. Michigan's got money. They got resources too. So if this turns into an NIL battle, Texas might have to pay a pretty penny to get this one done. But again, I feel like the Horns know that they need another tackle, and Malachi Lee is one of the top guys that they could realistically get to flip. Easy for me to say right now. So Krell and Lee would be great. But those two together still probably don't get you to number one. So who else is out there? Well, there are a couple of Oregon commits who had Texas as a finalist before choosing the Ducks. And I'm usually a bit weary about having success flipping anyone away from Oregon with all the Phil Knight Nike money that they've got up there. They bring in top class after top class after top class. They've got money, they've got resources, they've got a lot of things that have helped them be competitive in this era of college football. But Texas has had success in flipping Oregon commits in the last two cycles. Last year it was Josiah Sharma on the defensive line, one-time Oregon commit, now with Texas. And in this cycle, it was edge rusher Richard Wesley, who once did a flip into a pool with Oregon coach Dan Lanning when he announced his commitment to Oregon early in the spring. Someone jumps into a pool like that, kind of assume they're pretty serious about their commitment. Well, Texas was able to get a flip a few months later from Richard Wesley. So that's twice in the last two cycles. Could it happen again for the Longhorns? A couple of names worth paying attention to. Jalen Lott, a Texas legacy who is from the state of Texas. Both of his parents went to UT. He's a wide receiver / athlete, just kind of a do-it-all, jack-of-all-trades player that Texas really wanted. Oregon got his commitment last month. Could he be a guy that potentially changes his mind? And then defensive back Devon Benjamin, who committed to the Ducks last week. That's another one. He's from California, doesn't have the Texas ties, but the Longhorns were a finalist in Benjamin's recruitment. Neither of those guys are going to be easy, but again, Texas was a finalist. I think they finished runner-up for both of those players. Could they make it happen again, stealing another player from the Ducks? I wouldn't hate it, and that would definitely help. Both of those guys are top 100 players in the cycle, and either one of them would give the Horns a big boost in their overall class rating. Another big fish that's out there. This one feels maybe the least likely of the names that we've touched on so far, but I'll bring them up anyways. Five-star edge rusher Trenton Henderson out of the state of Florida. It's another name worth talking about. Texas made a very late push in this one. They became one of Henderson's finalists after getting a late visit over the summer. He's currently committed to LSU. Maybe Texas can get a flip here. That might depend on LSU having a bad year and or their defense looking like Swiss cheese again. LSU fans are starting to get a little impatient with Brian Kelly. I don't know if he's on a hot seat just yet, but the seat's starting to warm up a little bit. The last three LSU coaches all won national championships. Brian Kelly keeps losing season opening games and keeps missing the playoff. At some point, he's going to have to get over that hump. And if LSU has a down year, well, that could help Trenton Henderson change his mind. And obviously on the other side, you need Texas to have a good year for him to pick the Longhorns. So that's another name worth talking about. And then last but not least, you look at the linebacker position. I think maybe not the level of tackle, but I do feel like that is still a position of need in this 26 cycle, even after the addition of Tyler Atkinson, the five-star a couple of weeks ago. Texas freshman linebacker Jonathan Cunningham, he's actually been getting reps at nickel during fall camp. So if he stays there, that means there's only one linebacker that Texas signed this year. That's Bo Barnes. They also only signed one last year with Anthony Smith. That's not enough. 2 in 2 years, just from a body standpoint, isn't going to get it done. I think both of those guys are going to be great players at Texas. But again, that's just not enough numbers to have in your linebacker room. So you've got a couple committed right now, but remember the name Brandon Rouse? It was a UT battle a few weeks ago. We picked the fake UT over the real one a couple of weeks back. Could he still be an option for the Horns? And then another linebacker, 4-star Isaiah Williams from Florida, another out-of-stater. He's currently committed to Ole Miss. He could be an option too. The Horns are going to continue trying for both of them. So long story short, Texas doesn't need all of those recruits to flip to end up with the number one class. Now, I won't complain if they get all of those guys, but they do need a couple of changes of heart to once again claim the top class in the sport. And if you do that in back-to-back years, recruiting success doesn't guarantee you national championships, but it sure as heck doesn't hurt your chances. And I will say that not recruiting well guarantees that you're not going to recruit national championships. So stars matter and class rankings matter. I know there are plenty of stories of 2 or 3 stars who turn into great players. Love those stories. Those guys are important too. But stacking elite classes in a row, that guarantees yourself a chance to make some things happen. That's been a big part of why Texas has made it to the CFP in consecutive seasons. They keep recruiting like this. Well, that streak is going to continue for a long while. And I think that's what all of us are looking for, right? So there you go. There is a realistic path. Again, you need a lot of things to break your way, but there is a legitimate possibility that the Horns go back to back like Jordan 96, 97 with the top ranked class in the sport. What say you? Comment below with your thoughts. Always love hearing from you. Where do you think this class ends up ranked when it's all said and done? All right, that's the future of Texas football. What about the current team? Texas brought in 11 transfers this offseason. Some of those guys got a ton of attention when they chose Texas. Up next, we've got 2 guys who didn't get a bunch of attention when they committed to the Longhorns. These are 2 guys who, even though they didn't get that hoopla, I think they're going to make a big difference in the upcoming 2025 season. We'll give you the names, and we'll tell you why coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for today's video sponsor, Monarch Money. You ever wish that managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or you're planning up for a big purchase, maybe a house, maybe a car, maybe a both, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full control and visibility over all of your finances. This is no ordinary budgeting app. This is way more. Monarch Money is like a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, all of your spending, all in one place. So you don't have to spend all of your time looking at 4, 5, 6 budgeting apps to try to figure out where your money is going. No, with Monarch Money, it's all there in one place. So you don't have to just manage your money. You can start actually building wealth, which is what we're all trying to do, right? Head over to monarchmoney.com. I'm telling you, this is the game changer. Take control of your finances today over at Monarch Money. And the best part, if you use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, you're going to get 50% off your first year. That's right. monarchmoney.com. That's the website. Locked On College. That's the promo code. You type that in, you are going to get half off your first year from our friends at Monarch Money. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. A couple of transfers that you should not sleep on. There are a lot of them, but today we're not talking about a guy like Jack Andrews. We're not talking about a guy like Emmett Mosley the fifth. Actually, we will be talking about Mosley in the next segment. But for this segment, we're talking about a couple of transfers that weren't the highest rated guys that Texas brought in, but they are guys that are making their impressions felt here in the first week of fall camp. And there are 2 guys who were here for the spring, but they weren't really here for the spring, meaning like they were on campus. They had transferred in the offseason in that winter window, but because of lingering injuries and offseason surgeries, they weren't full participants in spring practice. 2 guys we're talking about, defensive tackle Travis Shaw in from North Carolina, and the linebacker turned edge rusher Brad Spence coming in from Arkansas. I've heard some really good things about both of them in the first week of fall camp, and the insider sites back that up. We'll start with Brad Spence. Spence was Arkansas's 3rd leading tackler last season. He wasn't technically a starter, but he played a good-sized role in the Hogs' defense in 2024, and he played a big role against Texas. The Horns obviously won that game in Fayetteville, but Spence had a great day, 7 tackles and a sack. The eyes of the Texas coaching staff got to see firsthand what kind of talent he was. And Spence was one of the first transfers that Texas actually brought in this cycle. He came in as a linebacker, but he's been playing way more off the edge since returning to the field. And it's interesting. Like Ethan Burke, Colton Vasek, Zena Umeozulu, Lance Jackson, even Justice Terry, those guys traditionally all play on the same side of the line of scrimmage. Outside of Colin Simmons, the depth on the other side isn't quite as strong, especially since Trey Moore has moved to linebacker. Still think Moore's going to play some off the edge, but it sounds like the majority of the work that he's been getting has been at an off-ball linebacker spot. So that's going to open up some opportunities for Brad Spence. And again, that depth behind Colin Simmons on that side of the defensive front, not as strong as it is on the other side. Obviously, Brad Spence isn't going to start over Colin Simmons. He shouldn't. But I would expect him to get a good number of snaps behind him this year. Maybe 20, 25, up to 30 per game to keep Simmons fresh. But not just that, also because I think Spence is a really good player. Like, he's worked really hard all summer long and into fall camp. He's got elite speed, great instincts. He's energetic. He brings it every single day. Energy, bringing it every day. Like, those are good ways to get into the good graces of a new coaching staff. Obviously, you got to be able to play well too, but going above and beyond and putting in that work and, again, showing that you care. Like, Spence has done everything right from that standpoint. And it sounds like the coaching staff, again, is paying attention and they are taking notice. This is interesting. I'll give On Texas Football some credit for this. An interesting health note about Brad Spence. Before his arrival to Texas, it was not known that he was going to need surgery. He came to Texas. His initial athletic testing, he could only jump about 20 inches off the ground before he started feeling pain. Now, that's probably twice my vertical right now. So, that's me healthy doing that. But for Brad Spence, an athlete of that caliber, yeah, that wasn't normal. He was feeling pain when he jumped. The Texas medical staff looked into it further, and then they realized he needed surgery. Sounds like things have gone pretty well since then. And hell, maybe he's an even better player in 2025 now that he's hopefully 100%. So keep an eye on Brad Spence. And the other name that we're talking about here is Travis Shaw. Look, nobody really knows what the defensive tackle rotation is going to look like, right? At edge, you know what you've got with Simmons and Burke and Vasek. Those guys have been here. So it'll be tougher to crack that rotation because, well, the staff already knows how good those guys are. At defensive tackle, it's kind of open season, right? Who can come in here? You've got 5 transfers. You've got 3 high school recruits, only 2 returning scholarship players there. Who can come in here and impress the coaches the most to get the most snaps in that rotation? Travis Shaw was a former high 4-star recruit, former top 100 player in the country. He is a mountain of a man, 6'5", 342 pounds. His career at North Carolina was riddled with injuries, and I'll be honest, he just didn't quite live up to the hype. Even when he was on the field, he wasn't the player that he was supposed to be coming out of high school, but the talent is there. And by all accounts, he's had a pretty promising start to fall camp. And again, he was very limited in the spring. So far, through a week of fall practice, he looks like one of the best defensive tackles on this roster. And at that size, again, 6'5", 342 pounds against run-heavy teams and on early downs, he's going to be out there a lot if he keeps stacking these good days at camp. Cole Brevard's like 350, close to 360. Travis Shaw's 340. You've got some beef. Wendy's isn't asking that question about where the beef is. You've got some beef right now on the teeth of that Texas defensive tackle. Travis Shaw keeps stacking good days together at camp. He's going to be playing a lot of snaps early and often for this Longhorn defense. And, maybe the change of scenery was what he needed to elevate his play. He's from North Carolina. Sometimes being too close to home can do more bad than good. You've got distractions with family and with friends and people asking you for money and tickets and this, that, and the other. Sometimes, that can prevent you from reaching your full potential. So far, so good with Travis Shaw in Austin. Don't sleep on him. Don't sleep on either of these 2 defensive transfers. Again, maybe not the most talked about when they initially committed to the Longhorns, but guys who look really good and guys who I think are going to play big parts in this Texas defense. Travis Shaw, man, big body, but the talent is there. Hopefully with Kenny Baker coaching him up. Look at the job Kenny Baker did last year in his first season in Austin. I think he's got a chance to get the most out of Shaw and everybody in that defensive tackle room. What say you? How do you feel about Brad Spence? How do you feel about Travis Shaw? And give me a couple of other new transfers that you think are going to be very impactful for the Horns this season. All right, speaking of transfers, we'll keep the transfer theme going. Last night, Coach Sark held a press conference after practice, and he was asked about Emmett Mosley V. Made a very interesting comparison that got me really excited about what he's going to bring. I think it'll do the same for you. We'll let you hear from the head coach next, right here on Locked On Longhorns. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, final segment on a Wednesday show. Sark held a press conference after practice last night, answered questions from the media for about 20 minutes. One of the questions Sark was asked was how Emmett Mosley V is looking. Of course, the transfer wide receiver coming in from Stanford. Unlike Travis Shaw and Brad Spence, Emmett Mosley was not here for spring ball. He was a post-spring addition, so he's only been a part of a few practices during his Texas career. Came here for the summer, went through off-season conditioning and workouts, so he got to ingratiate himself a little bit with the team, but now he's out on the field going through drills for the first time. Sark was asked about Emmett Mosley, how he's ingratiated himself in this Texas offense, and well, here's some high praise from the head coach and an interesting comparison as well.
Emmett, I'm impressed with. He is a bigger guy than you think. Even for me, I have to remind myself he's 210 pounds. Okay, and so the fact that he's very smart, he's got extremely strong hands, and he's probably faster than I think too. Everything about him is probably better than you would think. We're fortunate with him. The system that he played in at Stanford, I think, helps him in his transition with us because there's similarities to the way it was taught conceptually. I think I spoke about this last time, as opposed to maybe Matt Golden. When Matt came to us from Houston, Matt was coming from an air raid system. Totally different way, the way that they teach the offense and the way that you learn a system. And every system's different, right? But when it's like, you live in the U.S. and then somebody drops you off in France and you got to learn French on the fly, that's tough. That's tough to do. As opposed to somebody who maybe is living in Canada and then moves to the U.S., it's not that big of a difference. They probably got some similarities. So Emmett, it's probably a little easier for him than maybe it was for Matt when Matt first got here.
A lot to unpack there. Does Emmett Mosley speak French? I'm not entirely sure where Sark was going there, but good stuff there. We'll start from the top, where Sark said Emmett Mosley's bigger than you think. He's faster than you think. He's better than you think. Those are all really good things to hear from a head coach. And Emmett Mosley is one of the biggest receivers on this Texas team. 6'2", 210 pounds. I just looked at the Texas roster before recording today's show, and only Ryan Wingo and the true freshman Michael Terry III weigh more than Emmett Mosley in terms of scholarship receivers on this roster. So he is one of the biggest guys that Texas has at that position. And he liked the coach saying that he's faster and better than he thought, and then we all thought as well. But my sort of big takeaway from that is, if it's easier for Emmett Mosley than it was for Matthew Golden to learn this offense, then should we be raising the bar in terms of our expectations for what Mosley's going to be this year? Like, Matthew Golden seemingly had no problems learning the Texas offense. He was by far Texas's best receiver last season, and he became Quinn Ewers' go-to threat on the outside in big moments. Hell, it felt like in all moments. So if Golden can come in here, speaking French or learning French or something about France, and he picks it up that quickly, he was still that good despite, having all of that learning curve, then, I don't know, maybe Emmett Mosley can really be a big factor for this Longhorn offense this year. So I liked hearing that. Again, a little bit of a different scenario. Golden was here for spring practice, so he had that bit of a head start learning the actual Texas offense when he got here last offseason. But Mosley, it sounds like he's assimilated himself pretty well. Sounds like he's picked things up pretty quickly here in his first few months in Austin. And again, in his first week of practice, I was a big fan of this pickup at the time. And the more I hear from Steve Sarkisian and the more I hear from wide receivers coach Chris Jackson, the more excited I get about the impact this Stanford transfer is going to make. And I think we read these quotes last week, maybe earlier this week, but I think it's worth bringing up again. Again, Chris Jackson, the wide receivers coach, he said, number one, Mosley is a tenacious blocker in the run game. He's a guy who wants the contact. That's going to help ingratiate yourself with the new coaching staff. But Chris Jackson also added, quotes, there's no doubt that he will be one of the guys in our rotation. End of story. We brought him here for a reason. End quote. So the head coach is saying what he's saying. The position coach is saying what he's saying. I don't think it's a reach at all for me to be saying that Emmett Mosley is going to be a vital piece in this Longhorn passing game this year, and hopefully one of Arch Manning's favorite targets. I think it's worth bringing up the stats again. Last year, in only 9 games, Mosley had 48 catches for 525 yards and 6 touchdowns. He did that coming off a torn ACL, and he also missed the first month of the season. He only played 9 games for the Cardinal as a true freshman last year. So in your first year of college football, with average to below average quarterback play and really bad talent around you, to do that in only 9 games, true freshman coming off of an ACL tear, that is insane stuff. And Emmett Mosley was recruited by Texas before he tore his ACL in his senior year of high school. A lot of teams, including Texas, kind of lost interest after that injury, but he looks like the guy he was pre-injury and pre-surgery, and that's big time for Texas. That's why the Longhorns went out and got him. He's a really good player, man, and apparently he speaks French too. I'm really doing a bad job figuring out this metaphor, aren't I? So pay attention to Emmett Mosley the fifth, man. He is one of the top 4 receivers that Texas has. He may be higher on that depth chart. And with Ryan Wingo missing some time over the last few days dealing with that dehydration issue, Mosley's been getting a ton of run with the number 1 offense. He's going to be fighting for playing time, not just down the line, but again, I think he'll be out there a lot 24 days from now when the Horns take the field in Columbus against Ohio State. Shout out Emmett Mosley. Shout out to Sark for the reference that maybe one of these days I will figure out. All right. And shout out to you if you made it this far. Number 1, thank you very much. Number 2, please remember to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, leave those comments, all of those great things. I really can't thank y'all enough for your continued support of Locked On Longhorns. You guys have been tremendous. It's been so much fun to grow this thing. I cannot wait for our first actual season together. And it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun for Texas fans everywhere. Appreciate y'all making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day. For your next listen, be sure to check out Locked On Bets with my man Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers. They are your one-stop shop for all of your sports betting needs, expert analysis, game picks, the lock of the day. They've got you covered. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll have more takeaways from Texas fall camp, also more sound from the head coach on tomorrow's show as we continue our countdown to game 1. Again, 24 days from now. So close, I can almost taste it. That'll do it for today. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.